All right, for more on this, let's go now to Jim Jatras, former U.S. diplomat. Jim, always good to see you. So these militia groups in Ukraine, we know they're Chechen. We know they're anti-Russian, even though Chechens are Russian citizens themselves. We know they've been trained by ISIS. We also know that Western press is sort of covering them in a very positive light. What's wrong with that picture?
Well, let's remember, during the two Chechen insurgencies against Russia over the last couple of decades, that there was a lot of favorable press here in the West, especially in the United States, for people who were anti-Russian. If there's any group of terrorists located on Russian territory that were fighting against the Russian government, that was a good thing. I mean, we remember the Beslan massacre and all the rest of it. But as the report mentioned, under Ramzan Kadyrov, the current president of Chechnya, that this area has been stabilized, and a lot of the Chechens, I would say most of the Chechens, are loyal citizens of the Russian Federation. That doesn't mean that we still don't have some of these jihadists that are in Syria, in Iraq, and now in Ukraine.
I mean, that's fair to say about any groups of people. There's always the bad apples in the group, right? But this particular Chechen battalion group called the Sheikh Mansour Battalion, they supposedly operate outside of the law, without any connection to government, at least officially. But the leader has told the press last year that if local law enforcement had what they call difficulties in any particular region, that they call on these guys. Connect the dots for us here. What concerns should we have about these Chechen fighting groups in Kyiv?
Well, there are a few concerns. One is, look, we know that there have been Chechen groups fighting in Ukraine ever since the regime change in 2014, and the Ukrainian government that came out of that is a very weak government. It's basically hostage to extreme nationalist groups within Ukraine that also operate outside so-called Ukraine law at this point, independently of the official Ukrainian army. These Chechen groups have been doing that as well. I think the really new ingredient here is that we have the leader of this group saying, oh, yes, and we trained with, and operated with ISIS. Oh, yeah, I guess that was a little bit of talking out of school. He shouldn't have admitted that.
How is nobody raising their eyebrows to that?
Well, nobody. Well, we are, but you expect anybody in the U.S. government to do it. I don't think they're going to, and I think this also is part of the problem with this. I'll say this phony war against ISIS in Iraq. That never was in Syria especially, that never was the priority of our presence in that country. And I think that's one reason there's a little panic now that we're coming out that the Russians, the Syrians, the Iraqis, and the Iranians are going to annihilate them.
Now, Jim, you worked in government for a great many years. The Ukrainian army is set to receive some $250 million worth of military aid from the U.S. in this coming year in 2019. What are the chances that some of these American arms make their way into the hands of these Chechen fighters who have ties to ISIS? What then? We always lose track of the stuff that we give our, quote, allies.
First off, we always lose track. If I can be even more cynical than that, I think even in Iraq and Syria, that wasn't always unintended. It wasn't always accidental. But to the extent to which we are supporting the Ukrainian forces, and they are operating, as you mentioned, in close association with these independent groups, yes, that's a real concern. And you'd think that a rational policy would say this is a real bad idea, but I don't think we're going to see that yet.
And before I let you go, President Trump made a surprise visit to Iraq today. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it was a great thing that he did that. I don't think we should have troops in Iraq, but as long as they're there, I think having the support of the commander-in-chief is a good thing. It seems he was well received there. If it throws official Washington for a loop while they're busy chasing their tails over this government shutdown, that's great too.
And now, while the president was there, he did mention talking about the troop withdrawal. Can you expand for us while he's there what this is doing to? Is it a rallying cry for the troops? I mean, don't they want to come home too?
Exactly right, and I think that I hope there is that subliminal sense that the people in Iraq are getting as well, that we're getting out of this this deployment in Syria, which, by the way, is completely illegal. At least the one in Iraq is with the invitation of the Iraqi government, so you don't have quite the same problem.
Very different than the boots we have on the ground in Syria. But you and I have touched on this before, the issue of mercenaries. They're probably going to remain on the ground, right, in Syria as we bring back 2,000 soldiers. Where do we go from there? Blackwater is back in the news. Can you talk to us about the American presence? Because it's not just the army.
Both in Syria and Afghanistan, it's not going to be easy for the president to follow through with his decision to get us out of there. The establishment, the Congress, they're going to be fighting tooth and claw against him the whole way. They're going to try to reverse this decision, and I think part of that will be to try to slow walk it. Yes, we'll get out, but not out of this area, and we have this little pocket down in Al Tamp, and well, we'll leave some contractors behind, and we'll still maintain a presence there. We want a thumb in the pie to influence the outcome of any peace settlement in Syria. So this is going to be, unfortunately, a more drawn-out process than I think the president would like it to be, but at least he's pointing in the right direction. And I hope that his will prevail in the end.
All right, Jim Jatras, as always, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and insight.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.